back with another episode of the IBJJF Podcast. My guest today is Brianna Ste-Marie. Brianna is a 2022 World NoGi champion, and she's competing in the upcoming Brasileiros in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Brianna, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
For sure. So let's talk about your World's NoGi performance 2022. Not too long ago, that was back in December. You had 3 matches, 3 submissions. You won all your matches by choke. Why don't you talk about how you felt that tournament went and what it meant to you to win your first IBJJF world title?
Yeah, so I guess going into NoGi Worlds, I was coming off a pretty busy season, but I really wanted to finish the year strong. And obviously collecting that NoGi World title is always something that I dreamed of. And obviously to do it at black belt. I won it at, I think at blue belt I came in second, and then at purple belt I won, and at brown belt I won. But to me, the colored belts were always, as much as I'm like super proud of all my accomplishments at the colored belts, winning it at black belt was always like, you know, the ultimate goal. And the colored belt tournaments were, you know, in essence, preparation for black belt.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy. And the timing was great, you know, of NoGi Worlds. I love it because it's like you go do it. It's like mid-December. And then, you know, especially if you've done well, then you kind of have like the holidays and you can celebrate with your friends and family. So I was really happy to have a good performance leading up to that. And, you know, before that, I had the fight with Maisa. That was a bit of a different rule set completely, you know, it was submission only. So I definitely had to do about a kind of a reset my strategy going into the Worlds. Obviously, it's like a points-based tournament. I ended up getting the submissions anyways. But I do think it's a bit naive not to be prepared for kind of a point set tournament as opposed to a sub only for sure.
Definitely. And you won in completely dominant fashion. Like we talked about, you had 3 matches, 3 submissions, all wins via choke. You had a darce, a guillotine, an arm triangle. And I went through, watched the matches again. Your average match length was less than 5 minutes. So it took you less than half the match on average to submit your opponents. Did it mean any more to you to win in such a dominant fashion?
100%. I was really pleased with my performance just because I feel like I really like demonstrated, you know, the things that I'm good at. Obviously, it's fun to hit something that you're maybe not hitting often in training. And it's like, oh, so cool that I hit that in competition though. But I really liked when I see like the impact of my work in training, like directly reflected in competition. And for NoGi Worlds, it kind of felt that way to me. I really like to, you know, attack front headlocks. So I was happy I was able to finish 2 of my fights in that fashion. You know, I like to chain it with like my half guard passing. And I demonstrated just that, which I was really pleased with. And then in the finals match, the head and arm choke, something too that I've been working on recently. So it's really cool to see that transferring into the tournament. And then just in the general sense, obviously I really want to establish myself as like a top female grappler in the world. So to win by submission obviously means that much more. Yeah.
Definitely. So let's talk about Brasileiros. You're going to be back in a high-level gi competition for the first time in a while. I believe the last time you competed in a high-level gi competition was the 2020 Pans at purple belt. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was like my last major. My last official gi tournament was the American Nationals at brown belt in June 2021. But yeah, so it's been a hot minute.
So what was the motivation for coming back to a high-level gi competition?
I think I mean, first of all, I always started in the gi. You know, I always loved the gi. I used to train primarily in the gi up until about purple belt. And then I didn't necessarily like choose to do focus more on NoGi over gi. It just happened to be kind of opportunities that snowballed, you know. And then if I was preparing for a NoGi event, obviously I was primarily rolling in NoGi. So then it just kind of was a snowball effect where I ended up going almost like a year and a half where I was only training NoGi. And then after NoGi Worlds in December, then I was like, okay, well, if there's a window to go back to the gi, you know, it kind of felt like now or never. I was like, I've been out of the gi game for a year and a half. If I'm going to do it, you know, obviously I don't want to wait until it's been like 3 years and then decide to go back to the gi. And I truly do love both. You know, it's something I've mentioned in other podcasts I've done, and I still like to say it. I think there's always like this big tension between gi and NoGi. And I think that it's fine to have a preference. I think it's fine to love both, which I truly, honestly do. And I don't think that you have to like, you know, put one down just because you prefer another one, you know. I think that they're both beautiful expressions of Jiu-Jitsu. So I really wanted to head back to the gi. And I've always like going up, I would go to the Worlds every year, before the pandemic, right? And that was like the Worlds in June and the Pyramid were like the event of my year, right? Like everything was in preparation for the Gi Worlds in the Pyramid, and I just remember like I'd always stay to watch the black belts compete, and I was just like always in my mind picturing that one day I'd be fighting like as a black belt in the Pyramid. So that's definitely something that I could just walk away from, just because I happened to like have kind of focused on NoGi for a year and a half.
Brasileiros is a pretty iconic event as well. It's known as an event that has amazing energy. It's in Brazil. There's so much history there. Was that part of the motivation for you to get back to the gi too?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've always wanted to go to Brazil, obviously. I think everyone who does jiu-jitsu, at one point has to visit the motherland. So that was definitely a motivator too. And then I basically wanted to do like a gi major tournament before the Worlds. And Brasileiros really seemed like the perfect opportunity because since I have been out of the gi game for a little bit, I feel like I don't have that sense of like where my level stands next to the other like top females in like, my division. So I kind of want to get a sense, that I don't want to go to Worlds and then figure out these like big gaping holes in my game, So if they are there, I definitely want to, sort them out in time. So Brazileiros for me is obviously I'm going in there 100%. I'm going to give my all, and my goal is to win. But I also want to like kind of collect some data and see what the girls in my division feel like, because I feel that I don't have that sense in the gi so much since it's been a little while, since 2021. So that's going to be a big thing too at Brasileiros, is just to get an idea. So win or lose, well, I guess the cliche, right? If I do lose, I'll learn and hopefully learn well enough in time for Worlds.
So you're going to be at lightweight. That's always a very stacked division. One athlete at lightweight for Brasileiros is Luisa Montero. She won Europeans already. She won Pans. I think it was for the 9th time. She's one of the best female black belt gi competitors of all time. Is Luisa someone that you've looked up to, and do you look forward to a match with her?
Yeah, totally. I have nothing but respect for Luisa. I think like, even if I just look at her run at Pans, like it was so impressive. Like, there's a couple like, up and comers in the division in the sense that they're not as established as Luisa. But she just went in that bracket, like, submitted Emily Fernandez, who's been doing really well, submitted Janina, who's been doing really well. And then took on Fiona in the finals and came away with the win. So I think, and considering how long she's been around, the fact that she's still able to come in and have like such a dominant performance, like really nothing but respect. Like it goes to show that she was able clearly in the past to hang out with the old school athletes, and then now hanging out with the new school as well. So I think that's definitely one of the names I have my eye on in the competition. Yeah.
Are there any other lightweight competitors, or maybe even just girls that you'd like to face in the open class that you're looking forward to having a match with?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I think there's a bunch of girls that I fought NoGi, but haven't had the chance to fight in the gi yet. Which I'm sure like would all obviously, like there's Fiona, I've never fought her in the gi, so that'd be a really cool match in the gi. There's Tata as well, who I've never fought in the gi. And then there's girls who have just never fought at all. So there's Janina, who's been doing really well. I'd love to see how our styles match up. And then as for open class, even Liz Clay too, I fought her only no-gi. I never fought her in the gi. So all these matchups like seem really promising. Yeah, really cool.
So you alluded to it already, but why don't you talk about your goals for the Worlds for the rest of the gi season?
Yeah. Well, obviously I really want to do the gi Worlds. I plan to do them. And I think my goal is always to, I see myself, I believe in myself, right? I think that whether or not I will win, I think I'm able to. And that for me is like, that's all I need, right? So I'm going to go in there and give my best. I like to give respect to all my opponents. But I think that, I have it in me to win. So hopefully that ends up being the case. And if it's not, well then, better luck next year, right? I think we're all on the same journey. So, but I would love nothing more than to have my hand raised in the pyramid for sure. That's been a goal since blue belt, I guess, when I started competing at majors. And there's nothing quite like the atmosphere in the pyramid.
I want to hear about your style a little bit and your game. You have a style that I think a lot of people would describe as old school. You do a lot of half guard, close guard, really good pressure passing on top. Can you talk about some of the influences that you had early in your career, or even that you have now, that helped you really develop and hone that style?
Yeah, for sure. I like to joke that I roll like a stiff 45-year-old man. You know? um, I think I had tons of influence in my game. I think like specifically my gi game. A big influence was Leonardo Saggioro,
Yeah.
or Cascal as people call him. Um, I mean, especially he had to unfortunately move back to Brazil, but he was in Montreal training with us for a while. And his whole kind of lapel half guard game was basically what I played like from white to brown belt. And the only reason I don't include, I still play it now, but just now I'm rediscovering it, after having taken a little bit of a break from the gi. And then that heavy pressure passing, like forcing the half, something that he was quite excellent at. So he was definitely like a big influence in playing half guard. And then I trained also with Fabio Olanda, and him too. He's a big fan of the half guard, especially like in terms of passing, like forcing the half guard, and then chaining that with the front headlocks. Definitely some inspiration from him there. I think and then I train actually just with a whole bunch of different people in Montreal as well. I really like to think of myself as like a collage of like all these people that I've crossed paths with in my life, and they give me an idea, and then they do something on me that's really nice, and then we kind of develop it through there. And I feel so blessed to roll with like so many different people with different styles. So while I do feel like I lean towards the maybe more like old school fundamental jiu-jitsu, definitely like a little bit of spice, inspired by all my friends from a little bit from everywhere. And then close guard, actually, that's a funny story. How I got into close guard was actually just because I love this story because I love to spread the good word of close guard. But I actually broke my hand at blue belt. And then, I was during my blue belt, like obsessed, like cultish phase where I was like, well, I can't possibly stop training. So I was training with like my cast on, and it smelled like awful. I couldn't I was telling myself I was like cleaning it with like a Lysol wipe and a fork and stuffing it in, but clearly that thing was like really just like a health hazard. But then as I was trying to roll one-handed, like the only position where I was actually like able to be offensive in was like if I could close the guard, because in open guard, without a hand, I just felt like I couldn't like track people as well and slow down the action enough to deal with them. And then by closing the guard, I just felt like I had such a level of control, even with just like the one hand. So then I was like, close guard, this feels kind of good. And then when I did get my second hand back, I felt then I really turned up the heat in close guard.
So I guess it's true that if you do get injured, you can still get better while you're hurt.
Yeah, especially if you don't mind having a stinky arm for 6 weeks.
Well, Brianna, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. We can't wait to watch you compete at the Brasileiros. Do you have anything else you wanted to say, or anyone you wanted to thank before we wrap it up?
I mean, just as usual, like shout out to everyone back home who helps me do what I do. It really does take like a village to raise an athlete, is what I really feel. So thank you guys all back home, to my coaches, my teammates, and yeah, thanks for having me on to chat today. I hope that this is it turns out to be like justified hype up, We'll see. And even if I fall flat on my face, I'll get back up and I'll try again next year, guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Brianna. You guys can watch her compete at the 2023 Brasileiros exclusively on Flow Grappling. Starts April 29th, runs through May 7th. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care.